Hello everyone, this is Piers Sinclair from SSW TV, and I'm here today to talk to you about building your developer career and how you can get to where you want to go. I'm really excited to see you all here, and let's dive into it. So the title of my talk is Launching Your Developer Career into Space, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip on how you can inject some rocket fuel into your career and boost it up into the stars. So here's a bit about me. I've been coding for 15 years. I started out in Python and Pascal, and somehow I wandered into .NET. I'm a bit of a washed up Yu-Gi-Oh duelist, as you can see in this photo. I'm a Mandarin speaker, and I'm a Scrum Master. So I'd love to connect with you all. Here are some of my connection platforms. We've got SSW, you can see my people profile, LinkedIn, and my GitHub. We've got the SSW Rewards app, which is a great app we've built in-house. What we did is we basically built that up by connecting the community, and so the community can use it as a networking platform. Additionally, when you log in and you scan some codes, attend some of our talks, attend some of our training courses, then you get points. And as you build up points, you will actually be able to collect prizes. So you can grab something like a digital thermos, or you can grab a Xiaomi band. There's a couple of other ones as well, but that's the general gist of it. All right, so starting your career is daunting. The world is changing rapidly. Just a few years ago, things were completely different, and it's just changing all the time. Careers are uncertain and unclear. When you start your career, you really don't know where you're going. Like, what are you supposed to do? How am I supposed to figure out what I'm meant to do? Additionally, the available information is overwhelming. These days, the internet just has vast amounts of data, and it's only getting exponentially bigger. So trying to sift through all that data and figure out, what you should do and get the data that's relevant to you, that's really hard. So what does that lead to? Well, it leads to a bit of decision paralysis, where you don't know what decision to make. You've got so much information available to you, and you don't know how to bundle that all up into real-world action points. So consider the world 20 years ago. We didn't have smartphones. They weren't around. People were still using those old Nokia phones. It's a bit foreign to me. I'm maybe too young. Facebook and YouTube didn't exist, so you couldn't jump on and watch videos online even. And of course, Windows XP was the biggest thing since sliced bread. Everybody thought that was the flavor of the month. It was great, and it was running really well. And compared to today's operating systems, it just sounds crazy. So consider a new dev that was starting 20 years ago. The world was very different for them. Cloud computing was in its infancy, so they didn't have access to platforms like Azure and AWS, or they were very early in their maturity, so you couldn't really do that much with them. Software was just recovering from the dot-com bubble, so it was like a crazy time. People were thinking they weren't going to have software jobs anymore, and that they were going to be done. And Angular, React, and even jQuery didn't exist. So you couldn't do even the most basic frameworks in JavaScript. So those devs back then, they probably had no idea how their career would go. They probably went in, they were like, oh yeah, I'll do this thing. And then it ended up being something completely different. They might have ended up as a cloud architect or as a React expert, or just diving deep into C#, which is a completely different language to what it was 20 years ago. I've got a few SSW stories here so you can get an idea of what some of those people might have gone through. We have one guy, and he basically started out in high school, and he was just 17 years old, and he actually taught himself to code just using online resources. And from that, he was able to apply for a few different jobs, did a lot of cold calling, and he ended up getting a job, an internship with SSW. And from there, he actually got a career. So he was able to get into dev at just 17 with no bachelor's degree, and he was able to get there before any of his friends did. Another one of our devs, they started out in real-time 3D graphics, and they did that for more than a decade. But as they were doing that, they kind of dropped into web dev by accident. They just applied for a job. They didn't realize it was doing web development, And in the interview, they didn't really pick up on any hints or anything. And then somehow they ended up in web dev. And a third story is we had one guy who, he was an IT director at a hospital, so a completely different field to development. And he kind of always had an interest in development, but he hadn't kind of properly gone down that route. And he decided to just take the plunge, start learning some dev, and ended up joining SSW just a few years later. And we have my own story. So when I first got out of uni, I was really quite clueless. I didn't really know what could I do. I'd done like a few different languages in uni, and I just sort of went, well, C# seemed like the coolest one, so I'll do that. And I applied for a few different jobs. And as I applied for those jobs, I guess I found one, and I dived into it, and I ended up being in desktop development. I didn't really know what was the difference between desktop, what was web dev, didn't know any of that. I just wanted to do C#. So I jumped into that company, worked there for a few years, didn't really learn that much about other technologies or anything like that. And I was just very into C#, SQL kind of things. So after that, I kind of heard about JavaScript, and I heard, that's kind of the flavor of the month. That's what everybody is really keen on. Everybody's thinking that's the new thing, that's the latest thing. And I didn't know kind of how that related to web development. I just thought it was another programming language. So I'd jump into that and I'd see, what's that like? Is that good? So anyway, I essentially moved into a company where I was doing JavaScript, and I learned slowly that, wow, this is actually what web dev is. So I figured out quickly that, it was completely different to what I've been doing before. And from there, I somehow ended up in consultancy. So I was just working for a few different companies, and I was doing a bit of web dev, and I applied for a consultancy company with SSW. I didn't even really know what consulting was really, and somehow ended up in SSW, and it's been a blast. So something more about my experience. I've mentored a lot of juniors. I've spent a lot of time, working with juniors and kind of figuring out what are their struggles, how can I help them to improve, what are the things that they have difficulty with, what are the pain points, why is there any confusion? And I've noticed that a lot of them have a lack of direction. They don't really know, where can they go, what can they do, what are the different technologies out there, and how can they apply that for their career? So new devs today, they have it even harder. Technology advancements are just exponentially crazy. They're going out of this world. Like 20 years ago, things were so different, and it's just getting even more rapid. Again, the information available is really limitless. The sky is the limit in terms of what you can find on the internet. So sifting through that and getting the nuggets of wisdom that you need can be difficult. And developer responsibilities have increased a lot. Back in the day, you'd jump into your little box and you'd be given a little bit of code, and you just kind of write that little bit of code, and that was kind of it. But these days, you need a lot more skills. You need to develop skills of stakeholder management. You've got to have skills in terms of DevOps and CI/CD, and doing testing, and there's lots of different skills you need, and it makes the developer's life a lot more all-encompassing in what you need to learn. So predicting changes is impossible, but you can prepare to adapt to those changes. As Sun Tzu said, strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. But tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. So how do you do that? How do you develop a plan, a strategy for attacking this? Well, the first thing you need is a plan. You actually need to figure out what you're going to do and make a plan for it. And in that plan, you probably need some things like a direction. Where are you going to head? Maybe a goal. How are you going to get to that? Like, what are you going to aim for? What do you want to do in the end? And a method. How are you going to apply some tactics to actually get to the direction and the goal that you're looking for? And then you need to adjust. So you've got your plan, you've written it down, you're like, oh, this is perfect. I really know this is what I want to do. But then 2 years down the track, you think, well, actually, maybe I wasn't right. I've noticed a few things, I've learned more about myself, and I really should adapt it to fit my new goals. That's perfectly fine. You just adapt the plan to fit your current situation. So here's the agenda for tonight. We're going to start out with making a plan. We're going to go through the direction. Where do you go? What can you do? Then we're going to go into the goal. What can you aim for? We're going to do the method. How do you get there? And we're going to have a plan template for you to follow so that you can map out your own plan and figure out where you want to go. So let's start with making a plan. Dale Carnegie said, an hour of planning can save you 10 hours of doing. So why you need a plan? Well, it's going to help with a few things. Firstly, it's going to give you better career prospects. Basically, as you develop your plan, you figure out kind of what are the things you need to learn, what are the technologies you need to know, how are you going to develop yourself, and you have more of a plan in mind for how to reach the place that you want to get to. Additionally, it's going to give you a clearer path for development, so you'll know, I need to get here, so I need to learn this, this, and this. And you're going to have more fulfillment and increased meaning. And the reason for that is because as you develop the plan, you figure out, what's important to you personally, what do you care about, and you go down that direction. So instead of working on a product that you don't really care about at all, you're going to be working on something that is really meaningful to what you care about. What are you interested in? Maybe you're interested in space. Maybe you're interested in China. Maybe you're interested in mining. It could be anything, but it's figuring out what matters to you. So what does the plan need? Well, we've gone over it a bit before, but we've got the direction. Where are you going to go? What do you want to do? And, what are the things you can do even? We've got the goal. What can you aim for? Do you want to be a really technical specialist? Would you like to do something that's a bit more people focused? Do you want to do something a bit higher level? Those kind of things. And the method. How are you actually going to use tools available to you to achieve those earlier two things? So let's look at direction. JFK said, effort and courage are not enough without purpose and direction. So direction, there's a few different factors. One of the first ones is the field you're going to go into. And there's a lot out there. There's really tons of them, but I'll give you a few examples. You've got web, you've got games, you've got mobile and desktop, and there's a whole bunch of other ones. But basically just do your own research, look at what's out there, and then choose something and stick to it. If you need to adjust your plan later, that's fine. Just revisit it and choose a different thing. Then you've got the different types of organizations. And there's basically three types of organizations. You've got a product-based org. And that's really where you're developing a single ecosystem. So you have a product, and then you build a software suite that fits around that product. So maybe you're developing a software as a service to help tradies to do their invoice management and things like that. And then you develop, little pieces of features to help with that. You might also develop a different kind of software to support that, something that sits on the side, and there might be a few different products that support it. And you're just developing everything around that one ecosystem. Could be about something else, like it could be for real estate or anything really. Consulting is another one. And that's really where you jump in and you help companies reach their potential. So you go out, you talk to a client, you liaise with them to figure out what are your needs and how can I help you to build the best product that you need. And you're going to translate their business needs into software development. It's easier said than done. It can be a lot of excitement. You talk to a lot of different clients, so they've all got different personalities, different needs. You also get to work in a lot of different industries because you're working with clients of different backgrounds and things like that. So that can be a lot of fun. And you've got line of business. Line of business is a little bit like a hybrid of the two. You're working for a business and they don't necessarily have just one product, but they have many different products and you're supporting that single business to do exactly what they need. So you've got to figure out what does your business need, but it's specific to that one. You're not going out and talking to different businesses. And you might develop 10 different apps for them, but you're working on the same business. So then you've got to figure out the industry that you're joining. So you've got IT industry, and that's really where you get to work with the latest technology. You're doing all the cutting edge IT stuff, and you're, working with other software developers. You're really heavily in that IT sphere, which can be really awesome. You get to do a lot of, cool things, basically. Non-IT is another option, and it is a good option as well, particularly if you have some field that you're really interested in. So as I said before, you might specifically really be interested in outer space, or you might be really interested in mining, or you might be into real estate, anything like that. So you've got to figure out what's your passion. That's how you figure out the industry to join. Then once you've got your passion, you've got to figure out where can you do that passion from, because not every industry is in every location. So let's look at some examples. Outer space, where can you do that? Well, you could probably do it at NASA or SpaceX. There might be lofty goals, but you can go there. Additionally, there's the South Australian space industry, and there's probably a whole array of startups that you could go to in America as well. So there's a lot of different locations, but you probably wouldn't be able to do it from some of the more, rural locations or places like that. Another example might be mining. Now, if you're in Australia, then for mining, you'd probably want to go to Perth or Brisbane. And that's because those are the places that are close to the mines in Australia. So Perth, you've got the mines up in the north, and you've also got mines in Queensland. So a lot of the mining companies set up their software shops in those locations. A third example is real estate. Now, everywhere needs real estate. So you've kind of got this in every location. You can really do it from anywhere. It's not bound to a specific geographic location, and you can be successful from anywhere you want. So if you're still unsure, then another thing to do is to ask the experts. So what you do is you go out and you find a few different people that are in different bits of the software industry with different experiences, and you basically ask them, how are you enjoying your career? What are you doing? Do you think that it's good for me to go into that? What would you recommend for me? Just compile a list of questions and ask a few different experts that you know, and then you can amalgamate all that and use that to make your decision. So it's really a choose your own adventure. You determine, what industry do you want to join? What field are you going to go into? And you just go from there. So let's move on to goals. As Henry Ford said, obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off your goal. So goals, there's a lot of pathways, and there's many different options for which pathway you can take. You need to pick a path. So it might be as, a technical specialist, or it might be as a tester, or it might be as a management person, but you've got to figure out which one's for you. And then that path will drive the area that you need to develop yourself in. So for management, you might need soft skills. For a technical specialist, you obviously want to focus on a specific technology, and so on and so forth. So there's lots of different things you can go into. You've got software architecture, DevOps, testing, and there's a lot of other ones. But you basically just research that online and see what kind of piques your interest. What do you want to do? Let's look at an example. So if you were a software engineer, you might have a career trajectory that looks a little bit like this. You might start out as a junior. A few years later, you go into a mid-level position. Then you might jump into a senior level position a few years after that. And then from there, you might branch out into different sectors. So you might become a principal software engineer, which is really a technical specialist, or a solution architect, or a tech lead, or an engineering manager. And there's lots of different ways you could go, but that's an example of some. Let's have a look at some of those different pathways you could go down. So principal software engineer. You pick the technology that really interests you, and you just dive deep into it. You could go into front end and be really the expert at that. And then anytime someone has a front end problem, they go, wow, I really want to call that guy or that girl. They know what they're talking about. You might do back end. You could do low code. You really just can pick any technical area and just become the foremost expert in that area. So the developer roadmap is a great tool that can help you to figure out the technology that you want to specialize in. It basically maps out, what are all the relevant technologies that developers can learn? So you can look at that roadmap and then go, well, I want to specialize in this area. And you'll have a really good idea of how to get there. Tech lead is another one, and that's essentially 50% dev and 50% people. So if you want to keep your finger on the pulse of tech and you want to stay as a bit technical, but you also want to do a bit of people management and you want to have kind of the best of both worlds, then that's where this is a great option. Solution architect is another one. And this is where you get more high level on the architecture of your organization or the product you're developing. So you probably want to put the application building blocks together and form that based on your stakeholder requirements. So you figure out what does the stakeholder need and you translate that into your architecture. And then once you've done that, you need to communicate it to the team. Now, it all sounds very simple here, but it's actually a lot more difficult in practice. There's a lot to it. And of course, all these roles have their own challenges. It's a very simplified version, but this is kind of a high-level overview. And you've got an engineering manager as well. That's where you're sort of 95 or 99% in people. You're not really technology focused at all anymore, or not technically at least. You're just dealing with how do you manage the devs on the team and using your experience and your knowledge to guide the successful management of that software and that team. And there's also, if you want to make a career change and go into something like woodworking, it's perfectly fine too. Some people get most of the way down their developer career track, and then they realize, it's actually not what I want to do. I want to go into something else, and that's perfectly okay. So in summary, there's a lot of pathways out there for you. So you've got to figure out, what's the one for you, determine your aim, and then you want to adjust as you go. Figure out if you still want to do that just a few years later, and then revisit it again and keep revisiting it as you go along. So let's look at the method. How can we put all of this stuff into practice? How can we figure out, how to get to the place that we're aiming for? So how do we get there? Well, there's a few different factors. You've got to look at things like qualifications, finding the organization that's right for you, keeping your learning up, developing your profile, and getting help. They're all important factors that contribute to your success throughout your career and achieving the goals that you set for yourself. So qualifications do help. If you have a bachelor's degree, it's going to be looked on favorably by a lot of people. That said, it's not 100% necessary. It's helpful, but you can still get by without it as long as you have good computer science fundamentals. So if you're not doing a degree, it's important to get deep on those fundamentals and kind of understand how computer science works. Finding the right org is another important topic. Interviews are a two-way street. So when you're doing an interview, it's not just them finding out if you're the right fit. It's also you trying to find out if that company is the right fit for you. Because not every company is the same and every person is different. They all have their own needs and every company offers something else to the employee that might be good for them or it might be bad for them. So how do you figure that out in an interview? Well, you look for green and red flags and you've got to define those for yourself. Figure out what are the green and red flags that matter to you. And then you find it out by asking questions and doing research online. Asking questions is a great way to figure things out in an interview. You can compile a list of questions that are relevant to you prior to the interview, and then just come in and ask them as you go in the interview and see if they align with what you really want. Researching online gives you another perspective. It shows you, what does the company represent itself as? Do they do anything that you're really interested in? Are they doing any exciting, courses, or just looking for different things that you would find interesting, basically? So green flags, they're the positives to look for. And these are a few that I personally look for. You have to define this for yourself, so you might not align with mine. but here's a few examples. So Agile is an example of something that I find very important. So back in the day, we used to do a thing called waterfall. And waterfall is essentially where you map out your entire product, your entire software piece for like the next 6 months. And you figure out, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Here's the exact requirements. I've mapped it all out in this big document. It might be 50 pages. And then you just go and start developing it. Now, for me, I think that's not a great way to develop software. And the reason for that is you just can't anticipate everything up front. So when you get halfway down the track, you realize that a lot of the requirements you define in your waterfall model, they're actually completely different, or the client asks for something else, or the budget runs way over because of that. So Agile is a solution to that. Has a few different advantages, but it helps you to deliver more successful software. And it does that by basically every week you do a sprint, or every 2 weeks, sometimes it's 3 or 4 weeks, but you do a planning of all the work that you're going to do. And then you work on just those things during the week. And then as you go through and you finish that, you do a presentation to the stakeholders at the end of the week, and you show them, what have you done and how's it going? And then they can make comments on that. Then if they decide, well, actually, I want this feature that we didn't talk about earlier on in the process, it's simple. You just add that into the list of features to be developed, and you can add it in a later sprint. And what that means is that you're really developing the features that matter to your stakeholders at that point in time. It's also very easy to understand. Scrum is a simple framework that is one of the most popular Agile methodologies, and it basically has a nice little guide online. You can go on there and read that, and it's just a page or two, and you can understand most of the key concepts. It's very suited to the variability of software development. So you can basically adapt the software as you need. If you decide this feature we're developing, actually that's not important, you can just throw it away. That's fine. You can add in new features. Of course, that'll increase the time to develop the software, but it's perfectly okay. You can adjust features to do slightly different things. Anything you want to do, that can all be done. Whereas with the waterfall model, you'd have to change the actual plan. So it would be quite difficult. So if you do choose to go down the Agile route, you should understand your chosen methodology. So for example, if you choose Scrum or Kanban, they're probably the two most popular ones, then you want to really dive deep on what is that and understand what it means. And the reason you want to do that is so that you can quiz the organization that you're going to join. You can check, are they actually practicing it? Do they understand it? Can they explain to you how they're putting it into practice? And then you can figure out if they're doing it properly. So another thing to look out for is that the tech stack of the organization matches your goals. So for example, if you're a web dev, you might want to look for React, Angular, and .NET. If you're in machine learning, you might want to look for Python or C# or F#. If you're in gaming, then C++ or C# might be good options. And if you're into native apps, then .NET MAUI could be a great choice to look for. Best practices are another green flag to look for. They indicate that the organization has a great understanding of IT. They've adapted those best practices. They've gone through the war stories and figured out that without them, software development's slow, it's delivering worse software, and you're getting a lower quality product because you're not implementing them. So you want to check that they tick most of the boxes for best practices. Now, you should define all the best practices that you think are important, because there's a lot of them out there and nobody really knows all of them. But just make a list of the ones you think are the key ones, and then you can go from there. And you can compile that into an interview checklist. So then you can go through and tick them off as you go in the interview and go, this one matters to me. They're doing it, great. They're doing this one, great. They're not doing that one, they're doing the other two, so maybe it's okay. Now, skilled peers is another one. The reason that's important is because skilled peers are going to give you faster learning. They've got a lot of knowledge that they've developed through their own careers, and you can leverage that knowledge yourself. They're going to give you better access to information because let's say you've got a DevOps problem and you know that this guy is really good at DevOps. you can talk to him and go, hey, I need some help with this DevOps problem. Can you give me a hand? And they'll solve it in, 10 minutes, where it might have taken you 2 days. If you know that this girl is really good at doing App Insights, then you could jump into App Insights and get them to show you the ropes in there, and that would help you out with that. And it's going to push you to improve, because the skilled developers, they know that, you should push people. They're going to question your choices. They're going to, give you good code reviews. They're going to help you to achieve your goals. They're going to be a lot more switched on, because that's what they're trying to do too. So red flags. And again, these are just the red flags that are important to me, but you've got to define your own ones for yourself. So old tech. And the problems with old tech include, and it indicates a reluctance to change. So if they're still on an old version of a software from 20 years ago, that means that, they haven't changed in 20 years. So how likely are they to change when the next tech problem or the latest tech comes out? It's probably unlikely. It's also difficult to work with, because older languages have basically less capabilities. They don't have the latest features. They're not as mature as the latest tech. And it reduces your employability, because there's less organizations looking for those old legacy technologies. So what do you avoid? Well, things like web forms, Silverlight, WPF, these languages that have been marked as legacy, they're not in active development anymore. So you can jump onto Stack Overflow Dev Survey and the JetBrains Dev ecosystem, and you can get an idea of what are the trending technologies, what's popular at the moment, and is it still going to be popular in a few years? And remember that you can fix the problems. So even though you might find out that a company has an old technology in place, you can make that a positive. If you jump in and say, hey guys, I've noticed that you're doing this older technology, and I would really like to move to this newer one, because I think it's going to really improve X and Y and Z. And then they might go, wow, what an amazing idea. You're already adding improvements to our company and you haven't even joined yet. So you can turn old tech into a positive as well. Immature tech is another one that can be a little bit problematic. And that's just because you don't know how long immature tech is going to stay around. If it's only 3 months old, who's to say it's not going to die out in the next 6 months? Who's to say there's not going to be a better technology that comes along? You really want something that's been around for a little bit, but it's not too old. It hasn't been marked as legacy, and it's still in active development. Sometimes a tech can be quite old, but it's been developed over that long lifespan, so it's still a relevant thing. A good example of that is C#, which has seen a huge uptick in the last few years as Microsoft changed it into a cross-platform language. And using slightly older tech probably won't affect your employability. There's always going to be companies that have things built on those technologies, even if they go a little bit out of flavor. There's a lot of apps that have been built in those technologies, so they're still going to be around. Another red flag to look out for is a lack of career progression. And some things you want to check for are learning opportunities. You want to check that they are supporting you to do certifications. They're supporting you to do speaking. They're supporting you to do exams, or if you want to go to university, or just there's ways to learn at the job, or you're learning off other people. Just some way that you can learn things. You want to check for career paths. Does it match what you are aiming for, or does it help you to get there? Or alternatively, do they have a career path that isn't quite what you were looking for, but it does sound really interesting and you can pivot into that? And lastly, you want to check that they're supportive of your goals. Are they happy for you to do what you plan to do according to your career strategy? If they're not happy for that, then it probably doesn't make sense to go there, because they will want you to do something that's antithetic to your own goals. So what you can do is compile a list of flags into a checklist. That's going to help you organize your thoughts. You're going to put pen to paper and write down all the things that matter to you And those things are going to be very clear in your mind as you talk to a future employer. You can make an objective assessment about those things because you've got them written down, and you can write notes about, how did they satisfy it? How are they not meeting it? You can put a tick or a cross against it and figure that out. And that's going to give you a measurable metric as well. You're going to be able to go down that list and say, well, they ticked 9 out of 10 boxes. So that's probably a pretty good place for me. Or they ticked 2. So maybe it's not the right place for me. So that might look something like this. This is something that I've cooked up, right? So this is things that matter to me. I want to look for CI/CD, infrastructure as code, React 18, .NET 6, branching strategy, Scrum, learning opportunities, and a career path that matches what I want. So let's look at a bad example. We've got here a company, they don't have any pipelines, so they're not satisfying CI/CD. They're using ClickOps to do their infrastructure as code. Well, that's basically no infrastructure as code. They're on React 17, which isn't too bad. It's not too old, but it's still not the latest release, so it's not the best. They're on .NET Framework 4.7, so it's super old now. They commit directly to main, so they don't have any branching strategy at all, really, which is chaos once you have a few developers. They've mentioned Agile to me, but they couldn't really explain it properly to me. So I don't really have faith that they're able to implement it practically. There's no learning opportunities that I could see, and there's no way to get where I want to go in my career path. So now let's have a look at a good example. For their CI/CD, they've got Azure DevOps pipelines. That's great. They've got Bicep deployment. It's fully infrastructure as code. They're on React 18. That's the latest version. They've got .NET Core 3.1, which is a little bit of an older version, but it's not too bad. It's at least, in the last few years. They're doing Scrum, which is perfect. That's what I'm looking for. I can see that they've got subsidized certifications. They've got speaking opportunities and monthly training courses. So there's tons of opportunities to learn there. And the career path they've got is not quite what I was after, but it is kind of piquing my interest. And I know that they've got the tools to equip me with the skills that I need to succeed. So I'm quite happy with the career path. So learning, why is that important? Well, tech is always moving. So you've got to be able to keep up with what's happening. So learning is something that you're going to have to do lifelong throughout your software career. And it's going to help you to stay with your peers, make sure that you're competitive and that you're, delivering the best software you can. So that's why you need to keep up. Additionally, you can leverage the community for your learning. So you can go to user groups, you can go to do online courses, you can attend training courses in person. There's all sorts of ways to leverage the community and chat with others, network with others, and figure out how you can learn from those other people. And how do you keep up in learning? Well, you can use the technology docs. These are a few examples. You can use Microsoft Learn, Microsoft Exams, Pluralsight, and many community events. Developing your profile. How do you do that? Well, you do speaking. And speaking is a great way to develop your profile because it gets your name out there. You see people in person, they see your name, they see what you're talking about. They can see, wow, this guy knows this stuff about this topic. And, they just realize who you are. Another way you could do it is to create content. So you could create some YouTube videos that teach people how to use a certain technology or how to do something, or talk about, what's cool about this. You could do that in blog format as well, or, any other content creation. And the third and final way is to raise your social media profile. So for example, you could have a large presence on LinkedIn or Twitter and just make a lot of posts on there, discuss different ideas. And then again, people will see, I know that person, I've seen them around. So why should you develop your profile? Well, it gets your name out there. It's a really important one because once people know who you are and know what you're good at, then there's going to be a lot more opportunities. It's going to be better for you. And it's going to be better for any company you work for as well, because people are going to know that you're an expert and that they should go to that company for help with that. problem. And it's going to help you learn by doing. So when you present something or you write a course on something, you actually learn more than somebody that's going to take that course, because you have to practically implement those skills and learn those things before you can design the course. And finally, it helps you develop your soft skills. So, you can develop skills in communication, in speaking, in writing. Depends how you do your profile development, but there's many ways that you can essentially develop your soft skills. So another thing that's important is to get help. You don't want to be filing it solo, and you've got to find what method works for you. Mentoring is one strategy. That's where you find somebody you think, wow, this person, they're really good at back end, so I'm going to have a session with them every month or every week and basically talk about, what can you improve on? Do they have any tips, any strategies? How can you do what they're saying to improve yourself and get really good at that area? Pair programming is another great tool. That's where you jump in a call with another dev, and it doesn't matter if they're more senior to you or less senior. You can learn from anybody, and you just basically solve a problem together. And that will help you to see what's their problem-solving strategy and see what your problem-solving strategy is, and then merge the two to have an even better problem-solving strategy. And ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, especially of the senior guys. They've got a lot of knowledge, and you should leverage that knowledge to help you develop in the areas that you are interested in. So, you can ask about any topic. Just make sure you formulate a well-written question that's easy for them to understand, and then go and ask them. And it's as simple as that. So in summary, qualifications do help. They're not everything, but they are helpful. The right organization is really critical. If you join the right org, you're going to develop at a faster pace. You're going to learn more, and you're going to get better results. You're also going to feel more fulfillment. There's a lot of pros to the right org. Never stop learning. You always want to keep developing. That's how you stay at the top of your game. You stay as a hot prospect for other companies. You stay as, somebody that knows their stuff and people go to for help. Get your name out there. Let people know who you are. Do it by developing your profile and just, become an expert in the things that you're presenting. And don't fly solo. Get help when you need it. Do it through mentoring, pair programming, asking questions, or any other way that is helpful to you. So let's have a look at a template for how we can put our plan into action. So you need to draw up your plan, and that will help you solidify your ideas. You're going to have them written down. You can refer back to that. As you go through your career, you can go, okay, here's what I've got, and you can make sure that anywhere you're going aligns with those things. It also is going to keep you focused. You're going to stay on those things that you've written down. You can, of course, adjust them, but you'll be making sure you stick to the strategy you've laid out for yourself instead of veering off track. And it's going to assist your decision-making. You're going to be able to look at your plan and go, does this organization I'm looking at, do they match that plan? And then you'll be able to make a decision if it's the right organization for you. So here's a plan template that I've drawn up. It might look a little bit different for everybody, but it's an example you can run off. We've got direction. We cover a few different things in there, like the field, the org type, possible locations. And you got the goal. What are you aiming for? And then you've got a whole different ways you're going to apply the method to implement to get to that goal, get to that direction. So here's an example. We've got Eliza Northwind. She wants to be a web developer. She's going to go into a product-based org because she wants to work on one thing. She doesn't want to be doing many different things at once. She really wants to focus on just making one thing the best it can be. She's really into outer space. So she's looking at NASA or SpaceX or South Australia. She wants to focus on the back end and get really deep on the back end. She's got a bachelor's of computer science, so that's going to help her along the way. She thinks that C++ is going to be the main language she needs for space development. So she's sticking to learning that. She's got a list of the flags in a checklist in a docx that she's got that she can refer to in her interviews. She's going to use Pluralsight for learning. It's going to help her to develop. For profile development, she's going to speak at local conferences like DDD Brisbane or NDC Sydney. And she's going to connect with a backend expert to mentor her for help. And here's another example. We've got Bob Northwind, and he is looking to go into mobile or desktop development. He wants to do consulting because he likes working on varied projects and helping clients figure out what do they want, what are they looking for, how can I help them achieve their goal, and then move on to another project and help another client do that. He knows that IT consulting is needed everywhere, so he is going to basically work from anywhere. He's only done high school, but he's confident that that's not going to be a problem for his career because he has got a lot of experience in developing, and he thinks that his experience is going to be practically applied. And he wants to be a tech lead. He wants to be a little bit in people, a little bit in development, but have his finger on the pulse of both. He's also going to use Microsoft Learn and technology docs to help him keep up to speed in his learning. He's going to develop video content for his profile development. And of course, he's going to do pair programming and ask questions to help him out. So don't forget the plan can change. No plan is stuck in the way it was written when it was first done. You want to revisit it every couple of years. And that's going to help you to reaffirm in your mind, is that still what you want to do? Or do you want to actually look at doing something a little bit different? Do you want to go down a radically different route? And it's going to help you to make sure that the plan still aligns with what you think after a couple of years of experience, when you've gained a bit more wisdom, you've gained a bit more understanding of how the industry works. As Bruce Lee said, a goal is not always meant to be reached. It often serves as simply something to aim at. So, in summary, it's important to have a plan. It's going to serve as a guiding post so that you know where you want to go and how you're going to get there. You want to include direction, goals, and method so that you have somewhere you want to go, you have something to aim at, and you have a plan for how you're actually going to put that into practice, how you're going to get to that goal, get to that direction. And you want to keep revisiting the plan and adapting it as you go along. You want to make changes and revisions until you're happy with the plan. Every couple of years, revisit it, look at it, go, is this what I still want to do? Does it align with how I currently think? So we've got the SSW Rewards QR code here. So you can scan this QR code, get some points, and you'll be able to get those prizes. This will be on the last slide at the end, so don't worry about scanning it quickly. I'd love to hear your feedback. So you can scan this QR code to give me feedback here about this talk. It's also going to be on the last slide. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to have you all here. And are there any questions?
All right. Okay, that was fantastic. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Out of all the topics that you can talk about, and you can talk about a lot of topics, from DevOps to Scrum to .NET, etc., why did you choose to talk about this topic?
This topic was very close to my heart because I felt like when I started my career, I didn't really have any information and I didn't know where to get it. And I kind of just didn't have any direction. And as I went through my career, that was kind of a consistent theme until, much later in my career, where I just didn't know where to go, how to go, or what to do. And I just kind of went through the motions and then ended up in places that I might not have wanted to go to if I'd had that information to begin with. So it would have been good to just have all that up front and be able to make that decision at the beginning instead of later on.
Right. And when you prepared your talk and put together a skeleton and talked to other people in SSW and said, look, I'm going to talk about this, what feedback were you getting? Like, did it change much of the way you thought about things? Like, I saw you put some case studies in there. This person did this person did this. Like, I was trying to guess who they were. Did any of that feedback shape your understanding of the topic?
Yeah, definitely. I think everybody's got a different path. Everybody goes down things a different way. They've all got a different way of approaching things. What's a green or red flag for me might not be the same for somebody else. So I think that was an important thing that I took out from it, is just make a note that everybody needs to make these things up for themselves. They need to think about what matters to them. It's not just saying you should do it this way or you should do it that way. They've got to think about, how should they do it and how would they like to do it.
And the people you spoke to, I assume almost all SSW people. So
Yes.
they're in consulting. Did they intentionally get in consulting? Like, have they thought about why they weren't working in a technology in a product company rather than a consulting company?
That's a great question. I don't think I've really asked anyone, but I'll definitely ask them after this.
Right. Okay. So you already had thought through the product scenario?
Well, I've worked in all three of those kinds of orgs.
Right.
So I've actually got experience in all three. So that was mostly shaped from my own experience working in all three. And I guess I didn't have any feedback on those three types of orgs.
Okay.
So I assumed it was pretty good.
So I'll ask some questions from some others. Do you have any advice, Piers, on selecting a tech stack or a programming language?
That's a great question. I think, like I said in the talk, you've got to figure out what path do you want to go down? What field do you want to go into? If you want to go into something that's a bit of AI, then you might want to look at Python and machine learning. If you want to look at something that's more like web dev, then maybe JavaScript is a really important one. Look at what languages apply to what you're passionate about, and then shape your decision based on that. And try to find something that's a little bit established, but not too old, basically.
Right.
Or rather than not too old, not that it's actively maintained, it's actively developed, like C#.
So I would add to that, if you look at, I think it was last month's Tech News, where we looked at all the stats of from the surveys, what people said they loved, what they did, basically, what they enjoyed doing maybe on the weekends versus how much they liked doing the tech at their work. And then we had a look at all the GitHub stats, which showed the languages growing and not growing, etc. So obviously, if you look at after you've worked out the ones you like, look at that they're trending upwards. Things like Ruby and PHP are going down the toilet.
Yeah, definitely.
So
check that people love them, but also keep in mind that while some people may love it, that might not be for everyone. So, for example, React is something that most developers love, but I found that a lot of people that come from a very back-end heavy side of things aren't as in love with React. They prefer Angular to React, even though React is more popular and more loved in JavaScript world. So that's also something to consider, is that kind of thing. Yeah.
I have another question. Do you recommend any resources on learning to code?
Learning to code. Well, I think Microsoft Learn is probably my favorite. There's a lot of awesome stuff on there. They've got tons of tutorials. It's very practical. You can also jump onto Pluralsight and have a look there. And just the documentation of languages in general is pretty awesome these days. They have a lot of info there, a lot of practical tutorials. So I think that's probably the best way. Yeah.
So now your age, with all this experience, and you kind of thought through this, what would you say to Piers who was straight out of uni? What job would have you taken?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say do everything the same way, because you ended up where you are today and you're very happy with it. So it worked out in the end.
Okay. All right. I have another question here. Among all the content creators you can find on YouTube, have you any tips to choose the best one on a subject that you don't know? The reason I'm asking is to avoid learning from bad examples.
I think the question is that they basically want to find out, if the person they're learning from is relevant, if they're a knowledgeable person, if they're an expert. Is that right?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. So I think with that, you really just have to, research that person, see where are they from? Do they have relevant experience? What are the ratings like online? Are people giving them a great rating, or is it a poor rating? And just make sure that they have a solid background of experience for where they've come from. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, learning is so interesting. Like, I think we can all think about a teacher at school that we thought we enjoyed and made it, it was worthwhile, and other teachers where we got nothing, which is most of the stuff we can't remember. I think I have the same experience when I go into a real conference session. Sometimes the way they teach, or they have weird mannerisms, or I think that they're bullshitting, I'm not listening. Other times I'm just immersed in the whole thing. So I think it's the same with YouTube. You get on one, if you like a style, you keep listening. If you keep learning, so once you like a way a person, I don't even think they need to tell you subscribe. Like if you like that style, they're going to create similar stuff. I think the biggest disservice YouTube ever did to us was removing the dislikes. I don't know why they removed that count, because it was an important metric. Sometimes dislikes are great because you can see, lots of likes, lots of dislikes. That's awesome. Let's see which camp I fall in.
Well, that's one thing I've noticed is people don't like negativity. So I guess that's what they were trying to achieve. They just wanted more positivity and less
Americans
negativity.
don't like negativity.
Right.
Aussies like it. We love it.
I love negativity myself.
The Dutch like it.
Well, I am half Aussie, half Dutch. So.
Oh, yeah. That's why he's super negative. All right. So I have another one. I just got pinged that I'm not allowed to swear on. Did I swear? I don't remember. Do you need a certification to stand out?
You don't need a certification, but it can't hurt you to get one. So, if you can get a certification, it's worth doing. But you can definitely stand out without doing it, as long as you put in the legwork to get the knowledge that is required for that field. And sometimes getting a certification can actually help you to make sure that you have got the knowledge and that it's not just you think you've got the knowledge. So that's kind of my opinion on that.
I'll comment on the certifications, because certifications, I can look at it from two ways. Running SSW certifications matter to me because they matter to Microsoft. The other thing is, most people will do their own self-study. Most people just like reading articles about tech or watching videos about certain things. When you get no particular reward for that, and you do it in your own bite-sized piece. Doing a structured certification is not quite as free because you have to go through this thing. But it is we've got many people at our company that once they've done it a few times, they do a lot. Like some people have done a lot of Microsoft certifications. It's a structured system. It has a lot of people going through it. There's a lot more effort put into these learnings than a YouTuber who put together a couple of hours to make a video. So they're solid. They've been critiqued by so many MVPs, and at the end you get to test whether you really understood that with questions. You're not doing it for anyone else other than yourself, but there is a fair dinkum piece of learning that comes out of that. And I think it's important. I really do think that they're very important. Next question for Piers. Do you need to push code to a GitHub repository to help you succeed in finding a job?
As I think what they're saying is, do you need to have a set of projects on GitHub that you can display to potential employers? I really think that depends on the different employers. A lot of employers don't even check that, but it can't really hurt you to do that. It's also going to help you to develop yourself, to put out some personal projects on GitHub. So it's great for helping you to learn. It's a great learning tool. I don't think it's a requirement. Everyone's got busy lives, so you can't do everything, right? But it's not a harmful thing to do. So if you do that, it's going to help you along the way, but you don't have to do it. Yeah.
All right, I'll give you my answer on this one. I think that you're crazy not to put your little file new projects and test out different languages or frameworks or whatever on GitHub. I see no reason why you wouldn't do that. It's free, costs you nothing. It's got your own personal little history there. An employer has a look on, they will see your contribution graph is green. There's several people at our company that everything they do is public. I see no reason why you shouldn't. And I think most people don't do it because they don't think about it. Next one. All right, here we go. Piers, do you need to have open source contributions to other people's repos on your GitHub to show employees you are committed to open source? It's similar to the last one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's quite similar. I think the difference is instead of building your own personal projects, it's more like should you contribute to other repos. But I think the answer is quite similar. It's always helpful to add to new projects, and it shows that you're committed, you care about that thing, you know how to do certain things, and it's just helpful for an employer to be able to see that you've done real world things. Yeah.
All right, I'll give you my thoughts on that one. Any project that you are using yourself, that you've played with, that is a project for you, go onto that repository, go into the issues, look at the ones that they usually tag as good first time commits, and just do a couple and see if you get value out of it. Because you can submit it, and some of them are very good at communicating why you got rejected, like what, or how they want multiple buy-ins from different people. Because don't forget, this is, and it's funny, the feedback you get can be quite harsh. You go, what the hell? I was just trying to help. There's my commit. I don't need anyone giving me so much attitude, but it's because it means so much to them. They use this, your little commit means something to them, whether they get it or they don't, or, so I think it's great for you. It's really good, and it depends on how much feedback you get.
Yeah, and it's also a great way to leverage the community. You can even find connections on there. You can find people, and maybe you even get a job out of it. They might say, hey, come work for me. So yeah, it's definitely great.
Okay, last question, Piers. There's so many, but I have to let you go at some stage. Piers, what is your own next step for your career?
Right. So, well, I love cross-cultural management. That's a big thing for me, and particularly working with the China office. I love developing the China office. So helping the China office to achieve their goals is a big thing for me, and making sure that office is in sync with our Australian office, and just making sure they achieve the thing that they really want to achieve. And we do it in conjunction with the Australian office, and the Australian office is happy too. So that's my main career goal, I would say.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear that, because I can't tell you how many people over the years, because we had the China office, SSW China, for like 20-something years, or in that vicinity. And a lot of people that have been in management have not given me any job except China. Like, it's too hard. I don't want to do it, because it wasn't suited to them. And then, obviously Piers has done many jobs to do with coding in the China office. He doesn't care. He's happy. No problems. It doesn't stress me out. I like doing it. So everyone's suited for different things, and I think that's a nice way to end. So thank you for putting that talk together, Piers. It's very well organized. I think it's awesome that you put all that work together. This is Adam Kogan signing off for SSW TV.